M80 qualified for the first time in VCT after multiple attempts. That means the guard, that means even 2G, which I don't even know if it's a proper org anymore, have beaten them multiple times to be able to ascend and go into Tier 1. But finally, M80 clinch it through a 3-1 defeat over SRB. And I want to quickly talk about M80 and Shopify Rebellion because they both clinch. Well, M80 clinches for sure, be able to play against Tier 1, while Shopify has probably been one of the more consistent orgs, continuing to play in Tier 2 and now have the chance to be able to play in Tier 1. They go through a play-in, which is a whole process. But I want to talk a little bit about the game and a little bit about the format, about how it affects the teams, especially in Tier 2. So for the game overall, I feel like no matter what, M80 just seems like a Tier 1 ready team. I'm not going to go complete in depth in the game, but I just want to give like a visualization or like a key insight on the team and how they've been facing Tier 2 overall. And M80 has been the team throughout the whole year. I mean, besides the beginning of the year, basically since Kaplan has joined as a coach and Cryo with the IGL, and they reformed this whole roster to become the most dominant Tier 2 team. And even if you look at all the VODs and all, the games, they've only dropped 2 maps. 2 maps. And that's crazy to say just because Tier 2 is a lot more volatile. There's a lot of, lesser quality teams that have pulled off upset against favorite teams. And so M80 has pretty much have done, something that hasn't been seen before in Tier 2, where they've completely flatlined all of the competition, where they haven't lost at any point pretty much since the first game of NA Stage 2, which is around April. Which is crazy to say. They haven't lost a single game since April. It's very impressive, this M80 team. They've gone from a team that has been not able to cross the line to a team that's ready to compete against Tier 1 teams, especially the low tier, the teams that don't make it auto bid into playoffs. They have a serious contender for them to take their spot, which is crazy to say just because Tier 2 teams, we've seen Ascension teams, maybe besides the G2, that hasn't been, it's very volatile. Even Envy, they've only won a couple games. Even, some Tier 2 teams that ascend in other regions. I mean, Nongshim and G2 are probably the exception, where they just come straight out of Ascension and pretty much have some good results. I mean, Nongshim, probably the best example. They're the first, Ascension team to be able to win an actual trophy, while G2 has been, Mr. Consistent. And M80 has a real threat on even, especially the less quality teams. I mean, teams like if we look at this group stage for Stage 2 of Americas, teams like EG and MV, maybe even MIBR, Furia, Bloud, Crew, C9, Sentinels, 100 Thieves. Like M80 against these teams, I think not necessarily they are favored, but they're in high contention to be able to beat these teams. And I think it's just about being able to step up to the Tier 1 stage. I feel like they've been dominant in Tier 2, but stepping up to the Tier 1 stage has changed a lot of the format of a lot of teams. I mean, look at Envy, for example. They were dominating Tier 2, but not necessarily in the sense of M80, where they've only lost a couple maps. Where Envy was sometimes throwing a couple rounds, which led to map 3s, and a best of 5 against a TSM, or a TSM maybe on a better day could have beat them, and it have been a whole different what if of VCT. But overall, I think I'll say it, and I'll say it again, that M80, if they're not on their radar, you're way in for a surprise, especially when it comes to playing. Because especially having the advantage, or I guess the disadvantage, it's the trade-off, where they're not going to be playing in any games anytime soon until August, which gives them roughly about a month and a half of prep and scrimming. Yeah, it's June. Let's say, yeah, about a month and a half. No, about a month. Gives them about a month of scrimming and prepping for Tier 1. And what they have in their advantage is that they're going to see all the teams that they potentially can face. They won't know until it gets closer to August, but it's going to be real interesting how that plays out, and given the fact that it is double elimination. So even if they get upset, they have a really low chance just to be able to make it into playoffs. And once they get into playoffs, it's a whole nother story of them having to make a grand finals and pretty much, making a top 2 just to qualify for champs. And if they make it to the champs, that's the biggest storyline. And a team that they faced in this grand finals, which made it somewhat competitive, is Shopify Rebellion. I mean, I, me personally, I have been rooting for this team just because they have probably been the most consistent team that has been stuck in tier 2. They've gone to multiple iterations of rosters where they've had really high peaks at a point where they had multiple different rosters. Now they have a more experienced roster. They've even had, because Shopify Rebellion is like the combination of formerly known as Moist Shopify and, you know, different iterations of the team where at one point they had Mata, they had Brock for the longest time. He finally gets picked up into tier 1. They had Vic. And so clear, like, stable star players that come out of this org, they just never able to cross the line. In this scenario, they finally make it in a chance to be able to qualify, but they have to face a LATAM team that is the loser of the LATAM tier 2 finals, and then the same thing for Brazil. So they're in a 1 out of 3 chance to be able to make it. And the problem, again, they make these games competitive with M80, but a lot of what I see with Shopify, especially for this roster, is a lot of silly, dumb mistakes. Like, there's so many times where I see a player like will go into certain like no man's zones. Like, I had a clip or a short that I had where Shopify Rebellion, they're on Pearl, and pretty much on A site they go swing into backside where basically the backside of B, not flowers, but the backside, and they get flashed by Nismo, they get killed, or they kill Nismo, and then they go to peek again. It's Jet, it's Raze, and then it's also Nature, the Fade. And they don't peek without any util, and all 3 of them die. And they literally get their only map pick win off of a 1v3 with their Sentinel Exa. There's so many bonehead mistakes with this team. Like, I just don't get it. Like, I don't get how a team so capable, so talented, where in some scenarios, like in the lower finals, they get a 3-0 and they'll look, pretty dominant. But in certain small situations, mistakes are made where, you pretty much have to be perfect. In a team where they haven't won, they're still making silly mistakes as if they're playing like a scrim. And I get it. Teams will say, just, play like how we scrim, like, have that confidence. But at the same time, it's like you have to know when to have your timings and know how the opponent plays. Because if opponent has a tendency of punishing your mistakes, then you have to pretty much know when to take the risk. And again, one thing as well is that I have really a hard time with Shopify Rebelling is throwing mana advantages. Like, there's clear mana advantages. There's 4v2s. There's sometimes even a 5v2 or a 3v2. Like, I guess in lower man, like a 2v1, yes, it can be understandable. But in high caliber teams, those rarely happen. Like, they'll happen like, maybe, once every other map. Like, a paper exit happens, on occasion, at least, recently. But with Shopify Rebellion, I think I expect the quality of this team to be better. Like, I'm kind of going on a rant about them, but I think as kind of like the person that's been watching the org, considering they've been, around for probably the longest, there's been a TSM, Oxygen, like so many established, even M80, they previously dropped out of challengers for a bit, but we pretty much came back just because Nismo wasn't on, what is it called, on Qbert Academy. I can't per se say if it's just the coaching, but it's something that I've been seeing this whole year, and it still continues to happen. But yeah, we'll get a little bit into the format of things. Pretty much M80 again have clinched a spot. They're for sure going to play a tier 1 team. They have 2 chances, or pretty much the ability to be able to just make it into playoffs, and then from there they have to make top 2. And then SRB have a chance. They have to go to either Mexico or Brazil and play the other teams, as I mentioned. And the thing that makes it so hard with tier 2 is that they have to make it top 2. So even if, let's say you love tier 2, like you want to root for both of these teams. They have really good players. You have Xander, former 100 Thieves, at one point IGL. You have Nature, formerly on EG. Smoke, a really up and coming duelist. You have Exa, formerly on T1 Academy. Teams that have capable talent. I mean, even Satellite from Qbert Academy. Like, to me, it's so crazy how it's pretty much a lottery chance of where they have gone from playing primarily tier 2 teams and official competition to having to play tier one competition. And both of these teams, if they both want to make it to champs, have to make top two. So the very likelihood of only one team is impossible, but the very likelihood of two teams dominating from tier two dominating into tier one, it makes it pretty hard for it to be possible. But we've seen crazier things from teams. And one thing I wanted to highlight and I've been thinking about recently is the deal with tier two, because I've been watching tier two, probably ever since DSG was formed. That's how I kind of got into tier two Valorant. And there's a lot of orgs, and a lot of orgs have dropped out, even like FaZe. And when it comes to next year in 2027, where the whole idea of the formats is we're going to do a lot of playoffs, there's no more group stage. And the thing is that tier two teams and even, creator led teams have the chance to be able to make it into, official tournaments like Masters and Champs. But the thing that I was kind of like a little bit down on is the whole deal with tier two is that you want to develop players in order to be able to make it into them making it tier one capable. And if they're pretty much jumped in, obviously they play these qualifiers, but pretty much everybody is kind of pulled into tier one now. There's no more tier two. There's no more like a pool, of teams that are regularly playing against each other in officials to get better. It's pretty much like the average team isn't gonna be anywhere close to, sometimes even the lesser tier one team. And so the fact that they're probably gonna have less practice makes it less than ideal of like seeing these teams like stick with like a core of people. There's going to be a lot of variety. There's going to be a lot of shifts, as we know, just because there's going to be less partner teams. And if there's less partner teams, then that means there's going to be, more competition. Maybe tier one teams may go to, like a fly quest, or tier one player capable teams may go to like a fly quest that aren't necessarily partnered, but are an org, and be able to like diversify like the talent into different teams. But I also think that it may make the pond a lot smaller, where a lot of the partner teams, let's say like a Sentinels or a Cloud9, yes, like a Sentinels may be able to get like a Cryo, or let's say like I don't know, let's just throw it out there, like a Trent. Maybe they get like 2-3 star players just because there's less partner teams. Some orgs may not be involved, and some players are free agents at that time. And so there's going to be more star tier one teams, but when it comes to tier two, not only I feel like is the quality of the average team going to be less just because they're not playing against each other, but it's also that the rich get richer, pretty much. The rich are going to get richer, and the average is kind of going to decline. As yes, the incentive for teams that are a 5-stack, like a Nongshim, they were a 5-stack in Premier, and they have the talent. If they have the talent, then they can win. Yes, but who's going to have the resources? Who's going to have, the performance coaches, the assistant coaches? Pretty much the teams that are partnered, unless, yes, you make it, but the very chances of that are extremely low, as most likely the format is going to stay. There's only going to be 3 teams that go into an international per region. And yes, there's cups, there's exposure, but that is one thing that I'm concerned about is the tier two. I've enjoyed watching tier two. It really showcases the talent where star players can thrive, like they can show out on teams that may not be as competitive. And then when they do have the opportunity, they have shown that this team is capable of being or playing against a tier one team. And so yeah, that's been something I've been thinking about with this tier two stuff. It's probably going to be something that has to be looked into, because as we go into the new year, not only that, but there's probably going to be multiple games going on at the same time. That's been the case for ENC, which is Esports Nations Cup, kind of like the World Cup. It's Team USA, Team Brazil, Team Norway, all that. After that, like it's pretty much there's going to be a huge disparity in players and teams. So yeah, again, M80, it's so exciting for them to be able to finally make it into tier one technically, because they're going to make it into the play-in. They have 2 opportunities. I hope they go and make it really competitive. I hope they have the shot, and I hope they play Sentinels. We all know that's the match. Forget any other regional matchup, but we all want to see M80 play against Sentinels. And if that happens, then that's gonna make Valorant in a good spot, not only narrative wise, but the ability that a tier 2 team has that capability to potentially beat a tier 1 org and maybe a whole revenge arc, which is super exciting to see. And for Shopify Rebellion, there is really good. I mean, I've seen some really good time. Like, I mean, man, Smoke is definitely a candidate for one of the players that should be like. I mean, especially along with Bonnie. I know that they're technically tier 1 now, but he's one of the duelists where like you definitely have to look into him. If your duelist is not performing, I think Smoke might take his spot. And so, and even other players, Xander, of course, really good smokes player. I mean, he can IGL as well. I'm pretty sure, it's been nature this whole time. Sure, Xander has that experience, that leadership to mid round and all that. And then along with Exa, pretty up and coming prodigy, kind of like a Cryo-esque Sentinel Viper player. I don't think he's played Chamber at all, which is kind of odd. I know that Smoke plays Chamber on maps, but they tend to lean on a lot of double smokes. And even Satellite has some really high highs, and I think his room for improvement, or his floor, should be improving. That's what I hope for, just because even with the team this stack, there's a lot of mistakes that happen. I hope they iron it out. I hope they make it in. And yeah, that's it for the video. This is the last season of Tier 2 for the moment, at least for the next 2 years, I imagine. And oh well, except for the plans, I'll tune in for that, and depending on how they go out, I'll provide some coverage for that. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about this whole tier 2 situation, along with M80 finally making it in, and then also the rest of tier 2 overall.